Hi YouTube, we're back with the EZIO. We're doing an assembly on this, just got done with the decals, and we're going to be starting the assembly of the parts together now. The first step on this install is to actually put the wing on. Well, that's true, and we're going to do that, but I just want to talk to you about the receiver I'm going to be using. This is a Lemon RX 7-channel with stabilization. I've got a link to the Stabilization Plus with diversity antenna. I have a link to just the stabilization with a satellite. So if you decided to use that, there's quite a bit of room in this fuse. And what you could do is you could drop that satellite in the back and then pull the cable through. I'm not going to use a satellite, I'm just going to use a diversity antenna on the non-stabilization plus. Now, one thing I've noticed about these Lemon RX receivers, the diversity antenna allows for two antennas to be at 90 degrees from one another. Okay, so 90 degrees, 90 degrees. That's not 90 degrees, this is not 90 degrees. You need to have them actually offset from each other somehow. Having two antennas parallel like that doesn't really give you any advantage, okay? So one problem I have with these cases is probably the biggest problem I have with these in general is the fact that the wires always seem to come out this side here, okay? Well, let's look inside this cabinet here, guys. When I go to drop this receiver in here, you'll notice that there's not much room. There's not much room for the antennas to actually come out without being damaged, okay? So what we have to do is we have to take and open up this case. Okay, there's two Phillips screws on one end and then there's two pins on the other end. This case is the Achilles heel of the Lemon RX lineup. They're junk and I don't care. They're very light junk and that's what I want. Okay, so I'm gonna put this screw down. If you have a magnet, throw it against a magnet because they're very small. Also, like this screwdriver is almost too big. I'm going to grab a smaller screwdriver. It's Phillips. And what you're going to do is you're going to basically take apart this cabinet. And I'll show you what I've done in the past, and it's worked well for me in the past. Okay, pause it for a second. Okay, so one thing about these receivers that's frustrating is just the fact that the cases are kind of crappy. And one of the issues you run into is like this is a small Phillips screw, and the first one came out okay, but the second one's not wanting to come out, and so you have to just really apply a lot of pressure to get it to turn so you can bite with your screwdriver. The reason I bring that to your attention is because you need a really small Phillips screwdriver to do this, and in a pinch sometimes you can get in here with an X-Acto knife blade to get it started, and once you're started then you can go ahead and get the screw all the way out. But even like this, which is a slightly smaller Phillips, it's too big dimensionally. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Once you get these screws out, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the bottom of the cabinet. It's going to pop off like this. You pause it. So what you have to do is try to pop this open. And so the easiest way is to usually run your blade in. And once you get your blade in, then you can take and you can kind of walk this up. You can also use a flat-bladed screwdriver rather. But you see this one's not wanting to pop open very easy. And I've run into that before too. Sometimes if you have long enough nails, you can use your fingernails, work nice for this. But what's going on is you're just going to get your fingernail in there and it's going to pop open like that. Once you have it open a little bit, you can kind of get your fingernails in there better. Just try not to break the pins off, the little plastic pins. If they break, it's not the end of the world. You can work around it. But what you've got here is basically the receiver itself, and what happens is these things are pivoting, both of them, okay, and they're on this little coaxial jack. And so what you have to do is you have to try to figure out, is it easier to just poke a couple of holes and just bring the antenna out like this, which I've done a number of times. Now in this plane, thinking about the size, you still kind of want them to come out the side, but really what's going to happen is you don't want the pins going this way. The Lemon RX, the way it's designed, is to go this way. You can switch it, but then you have to switch dip switches and all this stuff. I would rather have it here because all the rest of the servos are going to come in from that side. Now this is also the end pin. They sell them where they have a top pin as well. But for now, I'm torn on this model because the nature of, if I tuck those antennas down, then I end up with, you know, the wires that way. If I leave them coming out the side, then I can make my turn, but all I need to do is just eliminate this little tip. So that's what we're probably going to do on this one. So believe it or not, you can use a pair of scissors and just cut the thing off. Now, it leaves a little bit of a nasty spot, so you'll want to take and just make sure you don't have anywhere that would chafe the wires. And then this is just a little plastic piece that would have completed the little exit conduit, if you will. Okay, and this is what this receiver looks like inside. Nothing too fancy. But the reason we're not going to mess with it beyond that is twofold. One, we will keep this intact to protect the wires as they exit now tightly from getting kinked up against the inside wall of the fuselage. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to get these wires lined up with those holes. Can you pause it? So those things will stay in there, but only a little bit, because you'll notice that the hole is not very big. Okay? So one thing I've done in the past, and it works really nice, is I will take and I will heat up, preferably with a torch. But in this case, I'm just going to use this little lighter. Okay? So we're just going to heat up this plastic a little bit. This just happens to be around approximately the right size shaft to make the opening, okay? I don't think it's going to get hot enough with that, so let's pause it. All right, so one thing I'm struggling with is that the antennas keep moving on me. And so I will do this with either hot glue or CA. In this case, I'm going to do it with CA. So just a little bit, as little as you can get the job done with. And that is just non-foam safe medium CA. It's what we're going to use to hold on the tail. And then just one little drip of kicker. And we'll come back in for one more drip. Now the reason you want to be especially sparing with this stuff is because you can replace these antennas. These antennas you can buy for like $3. So just be prepared. If you would damage an antenna, you can replace it. I keep a couple of them on hand. I've only had to replace them, I think, once or twice. So we'll put the stuff away. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up this hole just a little bit more. And I've got a torch this time so we can actually get things hot. Heating up the tip of a screwdriver is a good idea. And then I'm just going to basically open up this gap a little teeny bit. Not a lot, a little, okay? Now we know which way we need these wires to shoot. So we're going to open that at an angle, okay? Now we can shut the torch off. But basically the objective in opening this case here is to give an exit strategy for these cables, okay? And these two cables now are going to be able to exit without being kinked, okay? Because these are coax cable, which basically means you need to protect them from kinks. If you kink an antenna cable, then it can compromise its ability to work properly. You see how that's going to exit, and it's going to kind of point downward? That's what we want in this case. Now, I've had to do this on, oh, I would say probably about a third of my Lemon RX products. I really like the Lemon RX lineup. I'm not crazy about the Stabilization Plus. I think that it overstates what it actually can do. Okay, so now that's in there and it's held tight. Okay, don't have the screws in yet, and you can see that we have these wires are going to be allowed to come out and be protected from getting kinked by that little tab on the top. So now we just need to reassemble this real quick. If you recall, these screws didn't quite fit on the screwdriver perfectly. Well, one of them worked out good and one of them didn't work so good. So you'll want to just put a little bit of pressure on it and you'll be fine to get them going. Don't over tighten these screws. You will absolutely, on the first try, you will strip it. If you do strip it, put a drip of CA on and then stick it back in the stripped hole and just let it set up. It'll be fine. Or tape the thing shut. You could tape this cabinet shut and you'll be fine. Okay. All right, so there you have it. So that's the mod that we have to do to kind of get these antennas to work. Now, the other thing too to keep in mind is it would be nice to have them at 90-degree angles from one another, but there's nobody saying that you can't make one go up, okay? So we're gonna just temp it in right now. We've got this double-sided tape comes with this thing, and so we'll stick that on there and it'll go all the way down into the bottom of the plane when we're done. But for now, we'll just leave this here. So first thing we got to do is hook up the throttle channel, which is going to be the second set of pins over. That's going to give us power. And then we need to take and put the bind plug on. And then we need to take the rudder and elevator, and we're just going to figure out which one's which right now. The one that's shorter is the one that's further. The one that's further is the one that's hooked up to the rudder. Okay, so this is the rudder. The one that's further is the rudder. Okay, so we'll just straighten these cables. And you'll see that this one says RUD right there. So we'll go ahead and signal goes up. That'd be orange on this case and white in this case. Then this is our elevator. So we'll stick that in there with the orange pin up. Okay. So now when we're all said and done, we'll tidy up the cabling. So now the other thing is we also have to plug in our wings at this point. Now these wings are going to go like this and this, okay? So we really don't care about their spatial layout exactly right now. We're going to take this. One of them's going to be aileron, one's going to be auxiliary 2. Right? Okay. So we've got this other wing here that's going to plug into auxiliary 2, or auxiliary 1 rather. Auxiliary 2 is the bind plug. Okay, so there's auxiliary 1. Now this is the aileron here. Now it shouldn't matter which one you pick, because we can rearrange our channels on the radio system, but if you find that you'd prefer it to be the other way, just flip those two around. Now one thing we've got to do right away is we have to turn on flap-ron support. So we'll flip this, and then you have to do VTEL and Delta together, and that will make no conditional change between VTEL or Delta. But what that does is that allows you to use channel 5, the gear channel, to turn the stabilizer on and off remotely. Okay? If you leave both of them off, which means standard tail, then that means the stabilizer's off and you have a full 7-channel receiver. Okay? If you turn one on, then it's a VTEL. If you turn the other one on, it's Delta. If you turn both of them on, then that means you have the stabilizer on. Okay? They never really, I don't think they go over that in the manual. It's really frustrating. So, first things first, get your radio turned on. Now, you'll notice it's not built. Okay? We don't care. We're just trying to turn it on. Throttle cuts on. Let's come around so you can see the radio system. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to System Setup, yes. Model Select, Add New Model, Create, Model Type. You could set it as a sailplane, but I'm going to set it up as a regular airplane. This is going to reset it. It's already reset because it's new. Model name is not going to be Acro. It's going to be EZIO 1.5M. So we'll get that scrolled in and we'll come right back.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got the model name in there, EZIO 1.5 meter. Then we're going to go to aircraft type. We're going to switch it from normal to flaperon, okay? Now you could also set it to one aileron and one flap, excuse me. You could set it to 2 ailerons and 1 flap, but I want flaperons, okay? Flaperons will give me support for this, and then later I can make it like this if I want, or I can leave it as flaperons and then just add a mix later when I add the split flaps. That's gonna give me the ability to do crow. Okay, crow's where the ailerons both go up and the flaps both go down, and it makes it so you can land this thing in a heartbeat, okay? Okay, so we're gonna reboot. I'm gonna go to my timer and I'm gonna set the timer. This is a 1300 or 1500 milliamp pack. And what I want to do is I wanna set it to like 8 minutes to save, to start. I have it set to one timer. The one time is the 1 out timer, and it's gonna be active with tone and vibrate for the alarm at 8 minutes, okay? So when I move the stick up past 25%, it activates the timer and it keeps running. Then when I press clear, it resets, okay? Now I'm gonna go into flap system. I'm gonna turn it to switch B, and then I'm gonna set neutral to 0. And I always set, when I'm doing flaperons, I always set it to 1 up and 1 down. Okay, and then I usually set the delay to about a second. I don't do elevator correction when I'm doing spoilerons and flaperons because it gets confusing. We'll do that later. Then we need to do a throttle cut. And the throttle cut is gonna be the same as what we always do, which is this switch in my case, switch H, and then I just set it to 100%. Okay, so now I can move the stick and throttle stays down. Then when I unthrottle cut it, the throttle's allowed to move. If I throttle cut at any point, it makes the stick as though it were down. That's to protect us from cutting our fingers off. Differential and expo, we'll just set all these the same as we always do. So we'll scroll down on aileron to this stick. The low setting will be 10, the middle setting will be 20, the top setting will be 30, excuse me, 30 with dual rates down to 90, okay? Then we'll scroll to elevator. We'll set the neutral rate to, the low rate to 10. The middle rate, oops, excuse me, I gotta set it to switch F. So we're gonna set this one to 10, the low 0 setting. Then we'll switch the middle to 20, and then the top setting to 30 with dual rates down to 90. So basically what that does is I start flying in middle, and if I need to back off the controls because there's too much expo, I can quickly decrease expo, or I can increase expo if it's like crazy. Well, the thing is, after the maiden, then we set the middle one to what we like, and then we do the same thing. We have the top and we double the bottom. Okay, and I do that for all my planes 100% of the time. And the reason you do that is because it's a lot quicker to respond in the moment of, you know, like I'm realizing it's not flyable right at the moment. As you advance and get a little bit better skill as a pilot, you won't have to necessarily depend on it, but it's nice to have it, and it makes the flying experience, especially for a maiden, a lot easier. Okay, so everything is set. Now we just need to go ahead and throttle cut is on. The gear switch is where it's gonna be. This switch, oh, let's go into servo setup, travel, reverse. We're gonna reverse gear. That always has to be done, it seems like. And then in servo setup, on travel, we'll go to auxiliary 2, which I have to center it, or excuse me, auxiliary 3. And I want to turn that up to 150% up and down. Now, why do we do that? It's tied to this knob, and that knob is what we'll use for our master gain on our stabilizer. Okay, so now that that's all done, I'm going to start with a 1.25 3S. You don't have to start with any battery. You could use any battery that's probably 2S or above and you'd be able to power this thing. So throttle cut's on. Plugging this in, I want this off. Make sure the RF's off. Okay, now we're gonna plug this in. We're gonna wait for the flashy lights that indicate it's in bind mode. Okay, yep, we're in bind mode. Now I'm gonna step back a step. I'm gonna turn on the radio while holding the bind plug down, which is here, or the bind switch. It says binding, easy, okay, DSMX 22 milliseconds. Okay, now I can let go of the bind switch. It's powered on. We make sure nothing starts. Throttle cut is on, and the first thing I do is test it to make sure it's working. It is in fact working. Now I'm going to turn throttle cut off, and it's going the right direction. Throttle cut's back on and back tested. That's the first thing you have to do. The second thing we're going to do is see if the stabilizer's working. It is working. Of course, the elevator and rudder are hooked up, and the output appears to be correct, but we'll have to get the control surfaces adapted. Master game's working. Okay, now I want to show you one thing I forgot, guys. Come around here. So what I need to do is I need to attach the D switch to the gear output, okay? So servo setup, oops, excuse me. System setup, yes. Channel assign. Gear is correct. It's going to be set to gear, but we want to make an assignment for gear to this, okay? We're going to walk back out. Now listen, once it reinitiates, okay, so it's working, but watch this. Stabilizer, on, off, off, on. So we have everything set the way we want it. Now we just need to go ahead and unplug the power. We'll take the bind switch, or the bind plug out, which comes with the Lemon RX receiver. We can lay that aside for now and put it away when we get to that point. And usually what I do is I will power cycle everything, make sure there's nothing weird happens. You want to find out now, not when you get to the field, okay? So now one thing too, when you're setting these things up, radio on first, throttle cut's on, stick is down, plug in your battery, wait for everything to initiate. You can see it's working. You can listen to the song from the ESC, the electronic speed control, which is played on the brushless motor. Okay, cool. So now we have to basically assemble everything. And what are we doing for, how are we at for time? 23 minutes right now. Okay, so we're probably close enough to where we're not going to be able to get it all in. So what we'll do is we'll come back. This will be the radio setup part of the build on the EZIO 1.5 meter. And when you come back, the next video is going to be actual assembly, now that we have the radio system installed and operational. So thanks for watching with us, guys. Don't forget to come back. Look in the description if you want to buy any of this stuff. Buy it from the affiliate links and you can help support our channel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.